All right, so today we're going to kind of dive into something pretty heavy.
Okay.
It's eco-anxiety. And, you may have heard of it, you may not have, but it's definitely something that a lot of young people are dealing with these days. And we're going to be looking at it through a recent article from The Spiritual Seek
Right.
called Eco-Anxiety, a deep dive into the environmental concerns of today's youth. So get ready to unpack what it is, why it seems to be hitting younger generations harder, and what we can all do about it.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? And they define eco-anxiety or climate anxiety as this kind of persistent fear that's tied to environmental destruction and, global warming.
Right.
And it's not like officially a diagnosable disorder or anything.
Right.
But therapists and mental health professionals are seeing it more and more. So it's really on their radar.
Yeah, and it's not just like a simple worry.
Yeah.
The article really digs into all the emotions, like the anxiety, the remorse, hopelessness, even a sense of bereavement for the planet, which is such a powerful image. Like, have you ever felt that? Like a grief for the state of the earth.
It's heavy stuff. And what's really fascinating is the article points out this kind of generational divide.
Oh, yeah.
With younger people seeming to be way more tuned into these environmental issues than older folks. It's not just a stereotype. There's actual data to back it up. Remember that 2021 global survey published in Lancet Planetary Health?
Yeah, the one with like thousands of young people about climate change?
That's the one. A full 60% of those aged 16 to 25 said they had serious concerns about climate change.
Wow.
And here's the kicker. Almost half of them said it was already impacting their daily lives.
Wow, that's huge.
That's big.
Yeah, that really puts it into perspective, for sure. It's not some far-off future threat for them. It's their reality now. But why, though? Why are young people seemingly more prone to this eco-anxiety?
Well, the article suggests it's because they're growing up with this very real, stark reality of climate change, in a way that earlier generations just didn't. They're the ones who are going to be dealing with the fallout for longer.
Right.
Imagine carrying that around with you. It's no wonder they feel sorrow, fear, frustration.
Totally. And the article also talks about how, young people are generally just more empathetic.
Yeah.
And it's not just empathy for other humans, but for the animal world, for the planet as a whole.
Exactly. And that empathy, while a beautiful thing, can also make them more susceptible to eco-anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not just about their own future.
Yeah.
It's about all living things.
Right. So where do we go from here? The article talks about, taking action, even small steps, to kind of combat that feeling of helplessness in the face of this huge problem.
Oh, for sure. And we've seen amazing examples of that, haven't we?
Right.
Like, think about Greta Thunberg,
right,
who the article mentions as like a big inspiration.
Yeah.
She embodies taking action, not waiting for permission to make a difference.
Totally. And her school strike movement, Fridays for Future.
Right.
It's a perfect example of how young people are taking charge, demanding change.
Exactly. It shows them they're not alone. Their voices matter. But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The article says that activism, while incredibly important, isn't the only way to deal with eco-anxiety.
Okay.
We need other coping mechanisms.
So what are some of those other approaches?
Well, they highlight two main ones.
Okay.
First, knowledge is power.
Right.
And this isn't just knowing all the scary facts. It's about understanding all the little details about climate change.
Right.
The causes, the effects, what's being done.
Okay.
They suggest this deeper knowledge can bring comfort and hope.
So it's not just knowing there's a problem, but understanding it enough to see potential solutions.
Exactly. The second is all about personal action.
Oh, interesting.
And this could be anything from going out into nature, feeling that connection, to adopting more sustainable practices in your life.
Right.
Like plant-based diets, reducing your energy consumption.
It's about taking control where you can.
Exactly.
Even if it feels small.
It's about agency. And then the article moves on to talk about how important it is to create a supportive environment for young people dealing with this.
Right.
It's about recognizing eco-anxiety is real and that they're not overreacting.
Right. So what does that support look like? Adults need to step up here, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's about listening to their concerns, validating their feelings, giving them accurate information.
Right.
It's about supporting their efforts, even if they seem small or idealistic.
Okay.
The article also highlights the need for mental health professionals to be more equipped to deal with this. They suggest making it part of training for social workers, therapists.
It makes sense. It's becoming more common.
Right. And we need to make sure the support systems are ready.
Totally. But here's something I found really thought-provoking.
Okay.
The article talks about the role of media and government in all of this.
Right.
arguing they have a huge influence on how we understand and react to the climate crisis. So it's about how the information is presented, the stories told. Are they suggesting like a shift away from all the doom and gloom?
Yes, exactly. They're calling for a more balanced approach, one that says, hey, this is serious, but also highlights solutions and positive actions.
Okay.
Things like renewable energy, the benefits of eating less meat, success stories from communities adapting.
It's about shifting the narrative from fear to hope, helplessness to empowerment.
Exactly. And they really hammer home the importance of global cooperation.
Yeah.
After all, climate change doesn't care about borders.
It's global. It needs a global response. And the article points out that developing countries are hit hardest by the effects, even though they've contributed the least to causing it.
Right.
So the article's saying we need to work together, sharing resources, global agreements, helping those most at risk adapt.
It's a huge undertaking, no doubt.
This is all so fascinating. I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
There's so much more to explore.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're just getting started. You know, this idea of global cooperation.
Yeah.
It's not just like some nice thought, right?
Right.
It's about understanding that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
That what we do here impacts people on the other side of the world.
It's like that butterfly effect thing, but like on a planetary scale.
Right.
What I find really interesting is that the article doesn't just frame this as a political or economic issue. You know, it brings it back to that personal level, those anxieties and emotions we're talking about.
Exactly. It's about recognizing this huge global challenge is also happening in the minds and hearts of people.
Yeah.
Especially young people facing a future that could be really shaped by climate change. You know, the article does a really good job of summing up the key points.
Yeah.
It stresses how important it is to understand and acknowledge eco-anxiety.
Right.
To help young people be part of the solution, not just victims of the problem. And, of course, it emphasizes the need for good information about climate change and global cooperation.
Yeah.
It's saying all of those things are key if we want to face this with any resilience or optimism.
It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between being overwhelmed by how big it is and finding ways to stay hopeful and take action.
Yeah.
It's interesting they emphasize both individual action and global cooperation.
Right.
It's not one or the other, it's both.
It's like walking a tightrope.
Yeah.
You need to push for big changes out there, policy shifts, international agreements, but also figure out what you can do right now in your own life.
Right.
The article reminds us that even small changes to our habits, you know, connecting with nature more, adopting more sustainable practices, those can actually make a difference for the planet and for our own mental well-being.
It's that agency thing, right?
Exactly.
Not feeling like you're just along for the ride.
Yeah, but knowledge is power too.
Totally. The more we get it, the more we understand about climate change. The better we can make decisions, advocate for change, find solutions.
For sure, education is huge.
Yeah.
It can really help with the fear and empower people. But there's one little thing in the article we haven't talked about yet, and I found it really interesting. Have you ever taken a personality test?
Oh, yeah, totally. I'm a bit of a self-help nerd, so probably every personality test out there. Why do you ask?
Well, right at the end, they suggest taking a mental age test or a personality test to better understand yourself and potential anxieties about the Earth.
That's interesting. I wouldn't have thought to connect those two. What do you think they're getting at?
Well, it made me think about how our personalities and how we think might shape how we see climate change and how we cope with it emotionally.
Right.
Some people might be more prone to anxiety or negativity, while others might be more optimistic and solution-focused.
That's a good point. Maybe it's about knowing your own strengths and weaknesses when dealing with this kind of complex, heavy information.
Right.
And then figuring out what works for you.
Exactly. It's about personalizing our approach to this global issue.
I love that. It's so easy to feel like, what can I do with something as big as climate change?
Right.
But maybe understanding ourselves better is a key part of managing that anxiety.
Yeah.
And finding our own way to make a difference.
I think that's a great place to stop for now.
Yeah.
It's a lot to think about. We'll be back after a short break to wrap things up and share some final thoughts.
Sounds good. We'll see you on the other side. So we've been talking all about eco-anxiety and, you know, how this global issue is hitting young people especially hard. But it's really about all of us as individuals, too, and how we each deal with it.
Right.
I really love that idea that understanding ourselves better, like through personality tests even, can help us figure out how to manage those feelings of anxiety and, you know, take action.
It is fascinating, isn't it? It's like we each have our own, you know, emotional toolbox. And if we take a look inside, we can figure out which tools will work best for dealing with this whole climate change thing.
Absolutely. It's so easy to get caught up in all the doom and gloom and feel overwhelmed by how big this problem is.
Yeah.
But the article, even though it goes into some heavy stuff, ends on a pretty optimistic note.
Yeah.
It talks about the resilience of young people, their passion for change, and the potential for positive action.
It reminds us that hope is important.
Yeah.
And that taking action can look like a lot of different things.
Right.
It could be joining a protest, changing what you eat, having those tough conversations with family and friends, or even just spending more time in nature to reconnect with what we're fighting to protect.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me. I feel like I get it now, not just the facts about climate change and eco-anxiety,
Yeah.
but also how to actually deal with those emotions and find my own way forward.
And that's what it's all about, right? Staying
Yeah.
curious, staying involved, and always learning.
Totally.
There's no one perfect solution, but by understanding ourselves, the science and the different solutions that are out there, we can each do our part to create a better future.
Yeah. So to our listeners, we leave you with this. As you keep learning about climate change and what it means for the world, think about your own journey.
Right.
How do you take in this information?
Yeah.
What are your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to dealing with eco-anxiety?
Yeah.
And what steps can you take, whether big or small, to help build a more sustainable and hopeful future?
It's a conversation that starts with us
Yeah.
and spreads out from there to our communities, our countries, and eventually our whole planet.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.